What is up, Janksters? It's your boy Graham, also known as HamHogs42 on the internet, and today I want to talk about an individual card that is making the rounds on social media and has apparently become incredibly controversial. And I want to talk about kind of why the controversy exists, where I stand on it, and why the entire controversy is silly, and why adding your voice to the debate is, I don't know, not necessarily counterproductive, but kind of silly and just more or less a waste of time as I add my voice to the debate. So, does that make actual sense? Only if I'm willing to laugh at myself. So here we are. The card in question is Chromatic Lantern. This is an artifact for 3 that came out in Guilds of Ravnica, not Ravnica City of Guilds. That's the more recent one. The Return to Ravnica. So it is an artifact for 3 mana. With lands you control, have tap, add 1 mana of any color, or tap, add 1 mana of any color. So you get a 3-drop mana rock that ramps you because it taps for mana of any color, and it fixes your mana base so that all of your lands now tap for every single color. So that seems like it should be like really good, right? Well, maybe, depending on the deck and depending on the circumstance. So you have to take turn 3 off effectively to play this. So you ramp yourself by 1, but at your 3-drop slot. So the argument that people are putting out, for one, I want to say the argument and the debate centers around Commander exclusively. Like in Standard, this wasn't a factor. Nobody ran this in Standard. Some people run it in Brawl if their deck cares about like the number of artifacts they have and they have 3+ colors. Sure, whatever. Like I have a couple of decks that do run it in Brawl specifically, but I also like care about the number of artifacts and I have a ton of rocks, so it's just another one. In the case of Commander specifically, there are people on both sides of the line, both sides of the debate saying this card is excellent, everybody should be running it, it fixes your mana perfectly, it ramps you a little bit, it's everything where you want to be. Then you have other people saying, like, vehemently, this is an unplayable piece of garbage that no one should ever run in any of their decks ever. I'm being a little... that's a bit of a caricature. I don't think anyone's ever said it's the worst ever, but I have seen the word unplayable be used in conjunction with Chromatic Lantern. And where I stand on this matter, I love Chromatic Lantern. I think it's great. I'm running it in at least 3 out of my 10 Commander decks because I think it's a really cool card in a casual pod. Now, in casual Commander, which all my decks are, this is great. No one is upset to see this hit the field. No one. You're not drawing any hate whatsoever, and it perfectly fixes your mana. Now, I have a Jegantha the Wellspring deck. It is a 5-color deck. If you have not had the privilege of making a 5-color Commander deck yet, oh my goodness, I dare you to build a mana base that is going to be playable without this kind of effect and without cards like Chromatic Lantern, that is going to cost you less than at least $200 to $500. Like, honestly, if you have fetches, if you have shocks, if you have triomes, if you have any of those cards, the cost of that deck jumps up dramatically. If you've ever looked at any of the mana bases in my EDH decks, which I do have, by the way, all my decks are available on Moxfield. I'm HamHogs42 over on Moxfield. You can check out all my Commander decks out there. My mana bases are sketchy. They all are. I'm building on a budget. I have always built on a budget. I will always build on a budget. I have no intention, even if money was not an object. If I had all the money in the world or all the Magic cards in the world, because let's be honest, if I had all the money in the world, I would acquire all the Magic cards in the world. If my collection was limitless and I could put whatever cards I wanted in my deck, I would not have True Duels in all of my Commander decks. Having a mana base that has a couple of stutters in it, I think, is a part of casual play. Like, if your mana base is perfect every single game, yes, your deck gets to do whatever it wanted to do, and that's good. And I'm not saying you should be, like, ashamed for running good mana bases if you have them. If you have the cards, use them, but not all of us do. And Chromatic Lantern is a $3 card or $5 card, depending on when you're watching this and depending on how this debate impacts its market price. And at the end of the day, it gets you what you want. If you have a lot of really crappy, like, tapped duels or a ton of basics, you throw this down, all of a sudden, all of your spells are castable. You will not be locked on color as long as you have enough lands. I think that's important. You can make a mana base for $10 that Chromatic Lantern can turn into a mana base that costs another person $1,000. And I think that's incredible. If money is no object and you are looking to optimize a competitive EDH deck, yeah, Chromatic Lantern probably doesn't fit. But there are 10 million cards that are great in Commander if you're playing casual that have no business being at the EDH table. So what's the beef? Like, why are we arguing? At the end of the day, arguing whether or not something is playable in Commander is a waste of everyone's time. It is not about Chromatic Lantern. It's not. Chromatic Lantern is just one card. If it fits your deck, run it. If it doesn't fit your deck, don't run it. It is that simple. I run Curd Ape in one of my decks. I have a Jund deck that runs Curd Ape in it. Is Curd Ape a particularly good card in Commander? Absolutely not. Even if you can guarantee that it was a 3/3 for 1, what effect does that have late into a Commander game? Almost none. It's like if I tap that late in the game, yeah, it's a 3/3 for 1. It's a powerful card, but it doesn't do anything on a 4-person board state. It just doesn't. The impact is super duper low, but I have it in that deck because it puts a smile on my face, and it's an iconic card that people have associations with. So when I play it, it might spark a conversation. That's why I run it. I'm running Chromatic Lantern because I can literally run a 5-color deck that requires all 5 colors in order to execute what it's doing. And Chromatic Lantern makes that possible with a mana base full of common duels and basics. I think that's a beautiful thing. I think this effect is excellent for the budget brewer. So if that's what you are, run it. And if you are not a budget brewer and you have true duels and fetch lands in all of your EDH decks, don't run it. But don't tell me not to run it. Because we are coming from different places. I'm not going to tell you about all the great places where you can get, I'm not going to tell you about all the amazing things that you can fry in peanut oil if you are allergic to peanuts. I'm not going to tell you that a deck is going to be better if you have a $1,000 mana base, if you can't afford a $1,000 mana base. If you can't afford a $1,000 mana base, Chromatic Lantern's got your back. So to say this is an unplayable card in Commander, it's a waste of breath. And so I think the debate is silly, to be honest. I'm not calling out anybody in particular. I also know content creators got a content. I completely understand that, which is why I'm adding my voice to this discussion. I am part of the problem. I see a debate raging. It's like, ooh, I might get some clicks. And so that's why I'm talking about this card right now. And I have thoughts on the discourse. At the end of the day, what it comes down to, Commander is a very local, very unique, what is playable in one meta, in one area, in one play group is different from what is playable in another. So to say a card is good or bad or unplayable in Commander, generalizations don't work when we talk about the playability or viability of Commander cards. On top of that, what's the goal of a Commander game? What do you hope to accomplish when you sit down for a game of Commander? Is your goal to win? The discussion around these cards assumes your goal is to win the game. Does Chromatic Lantern help you win the game? Sure, in a very narrow circumstance it might, but in a lot of cases you could choose better things that help you win the game more effectively. But for me, when I sit down for a game of Commander, my goal is to have a fun hour to 2 hours with my friends playing what is effectively a board game. I run all kinds of suboptimal cards in my Commander decks all the time. And I encourage you to do the same. It's actually a lot of fun. I run cards like Howling Mine. I run things like Veteran Explorer. These cards that have these universal group hug effects, and with no way to punish my opponents for taking advantage of them. I'm literally giving my opponents resources because I want to see their decks do the thing, and I want to see my friends with a smile on their face. If that means I lose more games, sure. I don't care. Because that's not my goal when I step into a game of Commander. Don't assume that your audience's goal is just to win the game. If your goal is just to win the game, yeah, there are probably better answers than Chromatic Lantern. But my goal is to not be late on my bills because I needed to build a 5-color commander deck. As a result, I love my Chromatic Lanterns. They're great. Anyway, that's my thought. Thank you for going with me on this. This is another edition of the Overthinking MTG Podcast. If you are interested in more of me sharing my thoughts about individual cards, they're not always this, like, I don't know, they're not always this meta about, like, the state of discourse within Magic. So do with that what you will. But I have a lot of thoughts about a lot of cards, and so I talk about that on this show. Yeah, Overthinking MTG, available on YouTube or anywhere podcasts are available. Thank you for checking this out. I really appreciate it. I hope you are having a fantastic day. If not a fantastic week, month, year, I hope that they're all great. And I'll catch you on the next one.